Hey groupers, Pastor Marshall. I hope that you are excited to be in group and maybe a little melancholy as we pick up the very last passage in the Gospel of Luke. It has been 60 plus Bible studies as we have worked our way through this book over the last year and several months. We've come to the end. Luke chapter 24. We're going to start in verse 36. What's the most difficult goodbye? This is what I want you to talk about, just to get the wheels turning in your small group. What's the most difficult goodbye that you've ever had to experience? What's the most difficult goodbye that you've ever said? And then the second thing that I think could be helpful is just, as a group, would you talk about how do you handle goodbyes? What is your approach? Do you have any strategies that make them go smoother? Especially those of you that are in the military that have much more experience at this than those of us who aren't. How have you prepared and used your experiences to make the goodbyes easier, to transition easier? Well, I'd like you to talk about that. Get the ball rolling as your group goes. Get everybody talking. But then I'd like you to talk about this. Luke says that they still did not believe because of joy and amazement. What an interesting idea, that they were so happy, they were so overwhelmed that they didn't embrace the fact that Jesus was risen from the dead. So I wonder this. Have any of you in your group ever experienced something that was, quote unquote, too good to be true, and you didn't believe it? Were you a part of something like that? Maybe it happened to you personally, or maybe you were a part of it. Maybe a windfall. Maybe someone passed away and you know someone, or you yourself inherited a significant amount of money. Or maybe it was a visit. We sometimes see these television shows like home makeovers where people come home and they're just overwhelmed. They can't believe what's happened to their house. Or even sometimes a military surprise as a service member is brought back without the family knowing it. I wonder if you've ever had anything like that, and you would just tell in your group about a time in your life where you could put flesh and bones onto these words. They did not believe because of joy and amazement. Then, based on passages like this and others, what do you think that heaven is going to be like? Here in this story, Jesus is in his resurrected body and he's eating. Do you think that we will eat in heaven? What do you think that we will be doing in heaven? Is heaven just going to be a non-stop worship service? Or is there more to it than that? I'd like you to look up 4 different passages of Scripture. There are more, and you might want to add to this list. But 4 different passages of Scripture that might help you get a better picture of what heaven will be like. First, a passage from the Old Testament. In the book of Isaiah, in the 6th chapter, starting in verse 1 and going through verse 8, Isaiah is taken up into heaven, and he tells us what he sees. Second, a passage from the lips of Jesus in John chapter 14, starting in verse 1 and 2. And what does Jesus say that heaven will be like? And then third, a passage from the book of Revelation. In Revelation chapter 19, verses 6, 7, 8, and 9, and you might even grab 10, you'll read about the wedding feast of the Lamb. What does that tell you that heaven will be like? And then finally, and this is going to cause you to slow down in your group a little bit, I want you to turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 15. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, the Apostle Paul is writing about the resurrection. He's writing about Jesus' resurrection, but then he transitions, talks about how if Jesus rose, we know that we will raise, and what will our resurrection bodies be like? And so in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, starting in verse 35 and all the way through the rest of the chapter, your group can slow down a little bit and just pick through these verses and continuing to add to the conversation of what will heaven be like, what will we be like in heaven? Those are the 2 questions. Finally, Jesus gives the Great Commission in this passage in Luke before he ascends into heaven. He says to his friends, "You will be my witnesses." He says, "Tell others what you have witnessed." So many times as a pastor, over the last 2.5 decades, I have seen people that are just petrified of telling others about Jesus Christ. I can't do it, they say. I don't know what to say. They're going to ask me a question. I don't know the answer to the question. I can't share my faith. Then sometimes, that's more often the case, but then sometimes people will tell me their stories about how they shared their faith and it didn't go so well. In fact, they didn't do a very good job. I want you to look at these words of Jesus. And I think that you'll draw some great strength from these words. Jesus says, "You will be my witnesses. You tell what has happened, what you have seen, what you have witnessed." And so we need to learn to be able to tell others our story. What has happened to me? Do you know your testimony? Do you have it told? Can you tell it in 2 or 3 or 4 minutes so that you could tell someone, this is what's happened to me. This is what I have experienced or what I have witnessed. And do you have it memorized, canonized, put in a package? Well, every week, I'd like you to talk about what you like and what you dislike. And so you know where I'm at in this passage. I like that the first thing that Jesus does when he just appears in the room, which is kind of scary, the first thing that he does is he says, "Peace be with you." Now this is Jesus. He is King of Kings. He is Lord of Lords. He is the omnipotent creator and sustainer of life. He is the judge of the universe, and he's in his resurrected body. But I like that the first thing that he wants to do, his first desire, is to calm them. I like that. And then I challenge you to share what you don't like. Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't like that Jesus likes fish. I don't like that he's eating fish. I don't like fish. Is that what we eat in heaven? Do we eat fish in heaven? I sure hope not. I think I'll be disappointed. And then a reminder of the application. Talk to you this week about that you would do the work of sitting down and writing out your testimony, practicing in front of the mirror, 3-4 minutes of what you have experienced, what you have witnessed in your life, the change that Jesus has brought to you, so that when you tell people about your Christianity, when you tell people about your faith, you don't have to know all the details of the Bible, but you know the details of your life. Well, I hope that you have a great last group, and I will see you this next weekend. God bless.